Sharon, are you hearing us?
Hi, this is Neal with Graveside Paranormal Tours, GravesideParanormal.com, Graveside Paranormal on YouTube. How's everybody liking the tour tonight? Adam, are you here? Talk to us.
Hello everyone, this is Neal with Graveside Paranormal Presents Spirits by the Graveside. This is being recorded on 6/4/2021. The release date will be 6/6/2021 at 7 p.m. on Spotify, Anchor FM, and YouTube, where you can see this awesome show of ours that is presented by Graveside Paranormal Spirits by the Graveside. Tonight we are going to be talking about the Tinley Park Lights. I have Mr. Sam Maranto on today. He's going to be coming in a little while, and we are going to be talking about this phenomenon that happened in 2004. It's a very... Me and Sam, we actually live in the same neighborhood, and I never saw it, and it's very odd to me that I've never ever seen it that day or anything, because I work midnights, and you would think that I'd be driving to work and be able to see that, but for whatever reason I didn't. But let's get right into the news, as we always do at Spirits by the Graveside. On May 28, 2021, from the Daily Wire, put out that in July 2019, the USS Omaha was swarmed by UFOs, according to newly leaked radar footage from investigative filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. Now, I watched this video on there, and you can see the center point of the radar, and all of a sudden you start seeing these anomalies start popping up. They were catching the speeds on this going at 160 miles per hour, the speeds of these anomalies, UFOs, if you will, that they were clocking them in at. It's a very interesting video. You pull it up on the Daily Wire. Other things in the news, on January 11th, I don't know how I missed this, but I saw it the other day, so I thought I'd bring it in. On January 11th, a Moscow swimmer took to Lake Baikos in Siberia to break the Guinness World Record for longest underwater ice swim. Miss Yekaterina Nexrazova was age 40 years old, swam 1.5 minutes underwater, and just in a two-piece swimsuit. I'm like, man, two-piece swimsuit. So she was not allowed to wear any kind of gear. The Guinness Book of World Records would not recognize that if she did. So kudos to her. I always like talking about really cool things like that. Good for her, even though it was January. I'm sorry to wait all the way till June to get to that. All right, from the HuffPost and YouTube. Now, I don't know if anybody's seen this video of this 17-year-old girl. This bear and about 2 of their cubs jump on their fence. The fence is made of cement blocks, and her dogs start almost like running at them, barking and this and that. And one of the dogs is fighting, almost it looks like, because you see the paw of the grizzly bear or the bear trying to hit the dog, and I believe it made connection a couple times. You see this lady out of nowhere. She comes out to save her dogs, and she pushes this bear right off the wall. I'm like, oh my. I don't know if I could do that. You know, I really don't know if I saw a bear. I'm just going to have to stay in the house and go, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. Try to come back inside. But that unbelievable. That's an amazing video. Check it out. It's on YouTube. It came off the HuffPost and many other things. I'm sure it was on CNN and all those other Fox News and stuff. A couple little things that we'd like to talk about. We are doing our nightlife tour again. We're going to be doing it on July 17th, 2021. We're going to be doing out of course, 115 Bourbon Street to start the year off right, and then we'll be doing more in the October months as usual. Also, we are going to more than likely be doing the Roth House in Watseka, Illinois. Parapalooza is going to be at the Roth House. in Watseka, Illinois on September 18th. We are going to have lots of vendors out there. You're going to get yourself a chance to, with our equipment, go through the Roth House and use our equipment. We're going to have regular walkthroughs between 12 and 6, and then we're going to do 4-hour blocks of people will investigate on their own, as well as us helping them out with all our equipment. So stand by for any kind of information on that. Now, what I'd like to do is I would like to welcome in, we are going to be talking about the Tinley Park Lights, Mr. Sam Maranto. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Investigative Researcher and Ufologist, MUFON Certified Field Investigator, Section Director, Assistant State Director, and State Director, honorary titles for Illinois. In the media, he functioned as a consultant, a contributor for TV series and documentaries regarding the paranormal and UFO subject. Also as a contributing author, consultant to non-fictional fiction publications, as well as TV series pitches, etc., etc. Mainly known for his investigating 3 Norfolk report cases, NUFORC, the Tinley Park mass sightings that we are going to be talking about. He was the lead investigator, or is the lead investigator for that. O'Hare Gates C-17 cooperating team investigator under Rich Haynes, NARC. And the Lake Cook car incident lead investigator, which I do want to talk about. I've never heard this story, so I want him to come in and eventually talk to us about it. MUFON CMS reports the Chi-Town Mothman. He is right now the lead investigator for the Chi-Town Mothman investigations. Multiple documentaries and TV shows regarding my many experiences in August of 1980. He's going to also tell us about his sighting of Resurrection Mary that happened in 1980. What I'd like to do right now is I would like to welcome in Sam Maranto. Hey Sam, how's it going?
It's fantastic. Great to actually be on the show and talk to you a little bit more about some of these very interesting experiences.
Cool. Let me ask you, what got you into ufology?
Well, ufology found me. I didn't find it. In 1959, I think I had mentioned it, I was up in Fox Lake near the border of Wisconsin, and my uncle had just started to build a house out there, and he had a drill. He drilled a well, and he was going up there on a Sunday, and of course my mom wanted me to get out of her hair for a while, so he took me up there. And while I was up there, of course, being a little kid, I decided to test how deep the well was, so I'm dropping stuff down there. And so my aunt and uncle, seeing me being a little bit mischievous, and said, "Get out of there." So I ran to the back of the yard, which was adjoining a channel that went out to Pistake Lake, and I started skipping rocks across the water. Meanwhile, I'm skipping these rocks, and an orb of some sort flies over my shoulder, right shoulder, and then goes off over a fence and behind a willow tree and goes up in the air. And when this happened, I felt this electrical surge, and it was very strange. It frightened the heck out of me. Then all of a sudden, for some reason, I was looking in the sky. My aunt comes out and she says that she was calling me for some period of time and didn't know where I was. And when I looked at her, I realized everything was dark out, and it wasn't prior to this object flying over me. I got in the car, went in the back seat, drove home, and when I got to the house, I know it was around 7 or 8 o'clock that evening on a Sunday. Dennis the Menace would have been on, and it was probably in October, so it was probably either one of the first 3 episodes. It was new. And instead of watching it, my mother asked me if I was going to watch it. I ran straight to the bed, covered my head up, and didn't talk about it, this entire incident, until I was about 20 years old. Then one day, this was prior to even talking about this, I remember on a Saturday, I believe it was 1967 or so, my father came home on a Saturday, and he was all excited about something. I heard him talking. But I think what really got me out of bed was the smell of bacon being fried in the kitchen.
Of course. So, gotta have that bacon, man.
Oh yeah, bacon, that gets your butt up, you know.
Oh, hell yeah.
So I run in there, I get in the kitchen, and I hear him. He's all excited about talking. He's talking about going to one of his students' house. He used to teach music, mainly keyboard instruments, and he was out in Bayless. and he was by a family. And when he showed up, the wife said, "Sam, get in here, go in the backyard. The boys are looking at something in the sky." And these two, the husband and the son, were amateur astronomers, and they were out there looking at something in the sky. He goes in the back and he goes, "What's going on?" And they go, "Wow, you just missed it. There were UFOs out here." He goes back in and he's like, "What are UFOs?" He had no idea what was going on. So they started cueing him in on the subject matter, and by the time he left the house, he had a book and a magazine, and that was what was on the table that morning. But little did they know, they gave him a book and a magazine, but they gave me the adventure of a lifetime, because it was just in a matter of maybe a month or two, I gave my first presentation before my classroom on the subject of UFOs.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Now, let me ask you something. When you started off your story, so you lost some time.
Yes.
So you have, that was and how old were you again?
I was just a little dude. I was like 5 years old.
5 years old, and you saw like an orb shape go over your shoulder, and
yes, it was an orb that flew over my shoulder, and it looped down and went over a fence, which was next to my uncle's, between my uncle's house and the neighbor, and it went up to the right in back of a willow tree.
And what time of the day was it again? When that?
Oh, it had to been afternoon. I would say it would have been because we left afterwards and we got home before. It had to have been before 8 o'clock, because I think that's when the show was. Mm-hmm. And it would take, so it had to have been summers around maybe about 5 o'clock.
And you have that missing time. Let me ask you this: have you ever had any vivid dreams after that?
Oh, I've had more than that happen. But I'd like to keep that private.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I understand, totally understand, because that's actually something I've heard, is that a lot of people get a lot of vivid dreams after incidents like that. That's what
boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard, at least. Me personally, I've never experienced anything, and I find that that story that you just told me is a very interesting story. That's wow. And you went and put your head underneath the cover for the rest of the day. You know, your story isn't too much different than mine, to be honest with you, Sam. I present myself when we're doing things. I tell people, hey, I wasn't looking for the paranormal. The paranormal found me. It's exactly the same way I say it. It's very odd.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of people, they're not looking for these things. But all of a sudden, these things just seem to happen for people. Let's take, for instance, the Tinley Park Lights that we're about to talk about. August 21st, 2004. People are enjoying the end of the summer, Sam. People are at Ozfest at the Tweeter Center. They're enjoying that. Who doesn't want to see Ozzy Osbourne? He's still kind of in good shape in 2004, not in 2021 as now. People are out doing their barbecues. They're having a good time. Guys are having drinks. And people are just trying to enjoy those last days of summer before school starts off. Take us into that day and tell us in detail of what happened. Because didn't everything start at about 9 o'clock?
It was about 9, 10 o'clock. For some people, may have been earlier. But I think for TJ, who was really one of the first people who contacted me, and he was with a group about 40 people. And TJ Japkin took some great footage. I think I had from that night, summers in a range of 13 sets of video that I reviewed. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing about it is, this was the day of the Air and Water Show. Yes. There was something like, 2 million some people down there that year. And we had the F-18s, we had which would have been the Blue Angels, which are stripped down F-18s. And then we had all sorts of other aviation, aircraft, etc. Mm-hmm. All of which were gone by that time. And of course, like you mentioned, Ozzy is pouring out of what was then the Tweeter Center, and the people leaving the concert, and some of them actually thought it was part of the show. And we had people contact us. In fact, it just so happens. The show, the footage, some of the footage is going to be maybe shown on one of the adventures with Ozzy and his son. Oh, really? So there's something going on with that right now.
Oh, that's great. I love their shows when he does that show with his son. That's good stuff. Go ahead.
Well, I'll tell
I'm
you
sorry.
when it's going to be coming out, or
Yeah.
at least I should hear something about it. The thing is, here it was a perfectly beautiful night. As you mentioned, sky's perfectly clear, not a cloud in the sky. And there was a wind, but it wasn't anything much. And people are starting to see this configuration of three red illuminations in the sky. And these are cherry red illuminations, as most descriptions. Some people say orangish. And it's funny, it has to do with your proximity, how close you are to these illuminations. The other thing is they were rotating in a counterclockwise rotation. They maintained the geometric pattern of an isosceles triangle, and the points between each, or the distance between each light, would only alter by your perspective when it would move. In other words, they didn't change. People saying, oh no, they separated. No, they did not. It was a person's perspective. And when we had the videotape, I was running it forward, running it back, and you could see it maintains the geometric form. It's just moving.
Right. So if people are, I'm sorry, Sam. So if people are watching from the east to the west, and some people are watching west to the east and north to south, they might see something a little bit different, right?
Absolutely, and that's a very important point. Because we have multiple perspectives, we were able to get video from different vantage points and put them together as far as the time and when there were certain motions that were able to keep it together and get a three-dimensional idea of, is this thing, and get an idea, well, could this possibly be a solid object, or are these three separate illuminations objects? The end result is, it appears it's a solid object. It represents itself as a solid object. In addition to this, there are people that were directly underneath and had observed it at a much closer range, who clearly noticed that this was an extremely dark object that blended into the sky as if it was camouflaging itself, and also at some points displaying a star field underneath, or what looked like a star field. But if you were to look at the edge, you could clearly see that this is an object that is trying to cloak itself to some degree. Other people were saying no. When it would fly, you could see that it was blocking out the light. Other individuals further away, say for instance, let's say off of Harlem, and say towards a tweeter center, that were looking north while it was north, they were able to discern that it's definitely something cohesive. It's one solid object, because the light from the city is shining up, and you could distinctly see there's something there. And you would only see that if you were away from the light, looking towards the city and getting that view. In other words, people were getting different perspectives and saying things differently. And that's fine, because you're getting a different perspective, and you put that all together, you get an idea of what you're dealing with.
Right. Now, how high was this anomaly object from ground to air?
I would say it was no more than, at its lowest point, probably about 2,000-3,000 feet, maybe even a little bit higher. Then it was also substantially higher, in excess of 30,000 feet at some point. On the 31st of October, we have a better idea, because there was some a ceiling of some clouds at some point near the eastern section of the vista where they were looking, let's say when it went further east. So we had a better idea of how high. The other thing is, on the October 31st, the Halloween sighting, there was a plane in the air. We have video of that, of the plane flying approximately maybe 1.5 miles or so in distance away from it. So it gave us a better idea of size, distance,
right,
etc.
Now, there's no sound whatsoever. It's in like a stealth mode, as you said. You're saying that it kind of is blending in, where it's blending in with the stars, if there were really any stars that night, through their stealth mode. I found that really, really interesting. But when you're looking at it and you're looking at the videos of it, you do see like an outside rim frame, if I'm saying that right. It almost looks like a little bit of a frame to it, where you notice that it is a triangle. Other than the three lights that you're seeing that all line up together, sure. But as you can see on the outside, you do see a frame.
Yeah, you could just, the funny thing is, we did some enhancements, and we're still going to do more with now we have better software, we could work on it. But there is something slightly discernible that you can distinguish, that there is something in play between it. There is no doubt that there is something in time-space keeping them in conjunction, or in together. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We know that to be a fact because in the October 31st, a Halloween sighting, there was a rotation that was noted. In fact, it's actually recorded, and it makes, if you put your thumb and your little finger out and keep your thumb, let's just lay it out perfectly straight. You put your hand out. Now rotate your hand, but don't move but keeping your thumb at the apex, and you're rotating your index finger around. This is exactly what had happened. It rotated around, and then what I did was calculate the distance and the timing, and it was substantially faster than a free fall. And the arcing motion means that there's something it's being held in time space. It's being held in place. It's not being separated. The distance doesn't change. So in a free fall, it would just fall any which way or whatever. No, it's a arcing motion. And a gentleman who was a defense attorney, seen it, who's also an amateur astronomer. He was out in Matson, and he observed it on the 21st of August, and he also seen it on the 31st of October. And he says when that made that arcing motion, he says that just floored him. It was just something totally remarkable.
Yeah, because normal things can't do that. No,
and people were saying, well, they're flares on. We know what flares on balloons. We collect the darn things. First of all, the illumination itself is larger than an airplane.
Right.
When we had the plane in the air, there was a commercial flight, and you could see it like a mile and a half or so away from it. And if you take that object, the plane, and compare it to the illuminations further away, it's bigger.
Sure.
It's as big or bigger than the illuminations themselves. So this is a huge object. The calculations, we made multiple calculations. I believe Ted and Terry also did some calculations from UFO hunters. For all of us, each of us did independent evaluations. That's how we do things independently. Mark Rodiger from CUFOS, Mike Swartz, all of them worked independently. We get the information, review it, and then we come back and see what we all come up with. And sure enough, we came back with some very large figures. This thing was no less than 1,500 feet on one side, if that is correct, if our assumptions are correct. And the other thing is, it could have been even larger than that. So take that into consideration. What on earth do we have that big floating around, and where on earth do we store it?
Yeah. Exactly.
Assuming that it's ours.
Yeah, assuming that it is ours, and that we're definitely going to get into that in a couple of minutes. One of the things, now these lights were spanning out as far west as, we'll say, Mokina, right? And they were going all the way to Alsip on the east, and south, Tinley Park, of course. How many eyewitnesses do you think that there were? There had to have been thousands.
Yes. And the other thing is, it wasn't just here. This started much earlier.
Right, 2 days, like the 2 days earlier, correct?
Yes, the 19th. We had a mass sighting in Minneapolis, St. Paul. This object stayed in the air well over 9 hours.
9 hours?
And, yeah, perfectly, was situated in the air, perfectly still. or if it did move, it didn't move much, and it stayed there. And then, as it left, it took on a hue of being red. It was over 30,000 feet in the air, and the news was people calling in like, what is this? And, of course, the usual procedures of calling in the National Weather Service and anything else, and nothing was in the air. Now, you could get an object, say one of these balloons caught in a cross stream of air, and it'll stay. It could stay there for some period of time. There's also a DARPA balloon that's out there, and we've had numerous sightings of these, where they do stay stationary. What they do is they're able to take the current weather, and they try to move about by either decreasing or increasing in altitude, and catching crosswinds or various various currents of wind. In other words, they can maneuver by just doing that. They're very, very sophisticated. We know what they are. This wasn't that. This was something far more unusual. That evening, on the 19th of August, it was also seen and recorded in 2 locations. Actually, there were multiple objects in Arizona, and I have 2 sets of footage. One is just mind-boggling. It's just remarkable object, very large. Again, this may very well be the same object. And to give you some idea where people were looking at this and getting a better detail of the shape of this, they were stating it looked more like, if you were to take the state of Arizona, not Arizona, excuse me, it looked more like Alabama. If you were to take a triangle and chop the end of it, the isosceles, let's say, cut the end off and actually make it square, that's what it looked more like. And that's a possibility. Even though we see 3 illuminations, there's that possibility there may be another one in there that may not be activated or illuminated. In other words, and people are saying, why do you need lights? These aren't lights. These are fields that were being picked up by the eye or cameras of wavelengths of energy. It has nothing to do with a necessity of being seen or shining light. So that's always a misnomer.
Okay. Now let's get back to the one in Minnesota. You said that was up there for 9 hours.
9 hours.
9
Neal,
hours.
Picture that.
And
9 hours sitting over a city.
So
isn't that wild?
That's crazy.
Yes.
At no time the government never scrambled anything. There's no eyewitness accounts of seeing any Air Force, United States Air Force planes flying around it to check it out or anything?
I'm really not sure. That may have been the case. I didn't work that case at all. It was just part of gathering data. If we have a case, I always look 72 hours out either which way of any other reports. Though I was on top of that immediately when I seen it come into the National UFO Reporting Center. It wasn't something, Peter Davenport didn't give me a call and ask me to look at it. It was out, it was in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Now, I look at all reports that come in within 72 hours before and afterwards. And then if I start working a case, I may look at correlations to historical cases well beyond that time frame, or even that area, if you have some unique characteristics. We had cases of objects that these unidentifieds looked more like spiders. We called it arachnids, and we had a few series of reports like that. So, and it wasn't that odd. It was just unique. Yet there's historical cases that go back ages on the East Coast, these arachnid type of sightings.
And after the Tinley Park Lights, the ones that happened on August 21st, one day later, they're seen again. And where are they seen again? That's the one in Minnesota. And then they're also seen in Melbourne, Texas and Melbourne, Australia, correct?
Yes, Melbourne, Australia, and of course we have a time difference. So
16 hours.
Now, the other thing is, this is something I find interesting that rarely gets reported. In each instance, here and in Australia, there were actually 2 of these objects that came in. The second one comes in about 45 minutes later, and it doesn't get that much attention. That one that comes in seems to be more of just, they say, one illumination that is red. And when you look at it through a telescope or some sort of optics, you can see that it isn't a solid red thing. It's a bunch of red illuminations all together, like a bunch of windows, was description, in a circle. So that alludes to something else that took place soon thereafter. In August, I had received a call from a gentleman up in Wausau, Wisconsin, who had seen 3 lights over Rib Mountain, and he was a weather a weather watcher for NOAA, and he would go up to Rib Mountain, and they had a fire tower there, and he'd get up in the fire tower and look out and see if there's any variations in the weather, and just give a report. So he got there, and he sees these weird lights looking, these huge lights over the mountain. He drives up, and he can't figure out what these darn things are. He was so excited, he jumps out of the truck, he doesn't even shut the door, goes up the tower, and it wasn't until he started to get up there that he was able to discern that this is a solid object between these lights. And as he described it, it looked like the undulation, the exterior is the undulation like an eel, or for instance, a mirage on, where energy is, or the heat is rising off a road. And he referred to as undulating. It was very interesting. And as he was going up, he was getting a sensation of electricity. He says it was prickly, and it was a static charge throughout his whole body. And he gets up there and he's looking, and directly in back of one of these illuminations, a section opens up and an object comes out, and it flies off, and it goes over a truck in the further distance, and the truck immediately, the lights shut off. Then this thing shoots off, and it comes back into the object. And this whole big triangular, and it was bigger than the mountain, by the way. This thing was massive. And it takes off, and it moves, and in an instant, it's gone. He says, Sam, this isn't 3 separate lights, it's one massive object. And I found that interesting. Now, getting back to your question, I got off topic.
No, it's fine. I enjoy it.
As far as Australia, yes, and you could see the footage on YouTube. It was from I think it's 24th, 24th, and either way, it was just a matter of a relatively short period of time. Now, on the 20th of August, a couple was out in the Adriatic Sea on their honeymoon on one of these clipper ships. In fact, it was the largest wooden clipper ship, sailing ship of its type in the world at that time, and it was off Kosovo. They're out there, and they had an astronomy night, and he was really into astronomy, so they're all on the deck, and the poor guy had laryngitis too, by the way. He was sick, but he wanted to enjoy this, so he gets out there, and they all of a sudden see these 3 illuminations going across the sky at a very high altitude. And first they thought it was the the naval spy satellites, the 3 of them that are in tandem, and that wasn't the case whatsoever, because we could always cross-reference that. We did too, as far as the location of where it was. And the wife had noted that it blocked out the stars when it flew in front of them. So it was seen in multiple locations: British Columbia, New York, Ohio. Oh gosh, there's a list of them.
Now, did anybody have any missing time at all? Did any cases out of we'll say up to the 4 days from starting the 21st all the way up until like the last thing, I think it's actually only 3 days, up until Melbourne, Australia, did anybody, other than seeing the lights, did any different odd things happen that anybody ever said?
The odd things that took place weren't that personal. The odd things were more so interference, electronic interference, animal reaction, which is always, I find, interesting. The coyotes and the dogs went wacky way before people were seeing these objects. It was very strange. We have the the video, and you could hear the audio, and dogs are barking and carrying on, and you could hear coyotes. It's
Right.
like all the animals are going goofy.
They're feeling
other
the energy
unusual-
or something.
Yes, they're definitely picking up something prior to, well before the people are noticing it, they're hearing something. Either a higher or lower frequency. And the other thing is, they were starting to get unusual crosstalk on baby, something like Night Shyamalan from one of his movies. They were getting weird crosstalk on baby
Monitors.
baby monitors, and people
boy.
remember those Nextel phones that had the radio communication.
No, I never had one.
Well, that was popular during that period of time, and they didn't work. Anybody with the Nextel with the radio communication, it didn't work in the area, and that was something that was interesting. There was also some other emergency type scenarios that were taking place, having to do with telecommunication, which we found out later. There were no planes in the air, absolutely no air activity. Imagine that, living in this area and seeing no air activity. So you can imagine the first response from the adults was that this must be some sort of, they weren't thinking UFOs, they were thinking terrorists. They were petrified.
Right. Now,
a good percentage of the people were scared.
in one of the videos, I don't know if, now there's, for the Tinley Park Lights, there was twice, one October 31st in 2004, and then October 31st again 2005. Am I correct?
There's a misnomer on that. It wasn't. It was another date. I think, and I forget the date, but I think TJ may have made a mistake and said that. But there was another sighting, but we have no video on that. It was, I believe, October the 1st. It was September the 30th into October the 1st of 2005. And that was an early morning sighting. I know because I was getting ready to go to, I think I was going to Arkansas or something, actually working on a case down there. And I got a call, went out, and sure enough, there was video. That was another sighting, mass sighting. And that was September 30th into the morning of October the 1st of 2005. And the reason why that didn't get much, it didn't get much press as the other ones, is because we really didn't get into investigating that as much as we did on the other two. The other problem we have is when you do start having, so let's say you have a real genuine sighting. More times than not, you start getting people doing hoaxing.
Sure.
So I went out and I interviewed some of the people, and there may have been hoaxing, but it may not have been. It may have been the genuine article too. I don't absolutely know.
Sure.
There was also a meteor shower during that period of time, which was also very interesting. There was another one, but the date is different.
What date was the meteor shower as well?
It was on that same date, October the 31st, 2005 is incorrect. It would be September the 30th into the morning.
Oh,
it was
okay.
Into the morning of the 1st.
Okay.
So that is incorrect. There was also another sighting, I believe it was on, I think it was 9/11 of that year. There was another sighting not far from there. And I don't think it was the triangular object, but an individual orb or dish-shaped object. We get so many reports, it's a matter of sorting through them. 90-some% of what we get, we have a prosaic explanation for. But the one I'm referring to on 9/11, I think 2005, was multiple sightings further east towards that, the Boy Scout area, the park there, where they camp and whatever.
No, I know what you're talking about. It's right near Gibbons Gardens, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
I know what you're talking about.
So that's where it was. We had reports from there, but there were two other locations. And on that very day, I also had, I was working on, in 2004, I was working on another series of sightings, ongoing sightings, at a location in Arizona. In fact, the gentleman that I had mentioned had that remarkable footage from the 19th. We worked together on a location literally in his backyard. One of the best site locations. Really, you get a location that you could do constant studies of truly unusual things happening. Well, we had 2 that year, actually 3. One area, of course, everybody knows now, the Skinwalker Ranch area, and 2 other ones that I didn't work on Skinwalker. I worked on one up in Wisconsin and then the one down in Arizona. But all of them having this very similar phenomena going on.
Weird. Now, since the 2008 showing of the show on the History Channel with you, UFO Hunters, has anything happened at the same detailed kind of sighting since 2008?
Yes, Lafayette, Colorado is one of them, and that was, I believe, in 2010. And there's footage, you could look that up, Lafayette, Colorado, UFO, and you can see the footage. It's exactly the same configuration.
Now, in your professional opinion, do you think it's something that's man-made from us, or do you think it's extraterrestrial?
Well, here, I'll give you some ideas.
Okay.
And again, it's very difficult for us to discern which is what, because I'm more than convinced we have technology that's relatively close to this, or close enough to mimic this type of phenomenon.
Okay.
Now, when you think of the 2000 Southern Illinois case, which most people do recall with the police officers chasing it down in Southern Illinois, Millstep, Dupo, Island, and then it actually went into Missouri, where it was seen by multiple officers, and it sat there for a while. It was directly over a squad car. And this was a very well documented case. In that instance, there was actually 3 different types of objects: the isosceles, an equilateral with a curved back end. I don't know what model they call that one. And then there was a square, perfectly square object, I should say rectangular object. And that rectangular object seems to be seen with these triangular objects. Also, in addition to these triangular objects, there are orbs, the orange orbs, which seem to come out and go back in. They're orange, orangish red. Depends on, again, where you're at and what mode of frequency this may be in. The wavelength alters as it moves, as it accelerates, etc. And I know that personally because I seen one over Pep Boys at the intersection of 159th Street. I believe it was either May the 2nd or
Really?
It was on a Friday of 2003, the year before. Picture that. At 9:40, it was on a Friday. I'm heading, and you know this exactly where I'm at, 100, you would know this, right lane, 159th Street, heading south, right-hand corner, and on LaGrange, and I'm looking, my wife tells me, look in the sky, what is that? And I look to the left, and of course, Walgreens was there. I go, it's Walgreens. And she goes, no, look up there. She was ready to smack me.
Yeah.
So I bent my head down and look up because I couldn't see it. And I had to look up. And sure enough, there's this orangish red. Picture the sun when it comes up or it's going down. That exactly that color. Sitting static in the sky. And it's about the size, if you take your arm, your hand, your arm actually, and hand, and try to hold a quarter, between a quarter and $50 is approximately the size. And it's sitting there static in the sky. Then there's these discharges all around it, like static discharges, sparks all the way around it. And oozing from the bottom seems to be like molten metal, but it appears to be more like smaller orbs coming out of the bottom.
And
But
hold on,
the
this was off of the Grange.
You know what Pep Boys is?
Yeah,
that,
no, I know
correct?
exactly. Yeah, 159th, and that's on the east side corner.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're looking, picture you're at 159th and LaGrange Road, but you're in the northwest corner in the right-hand lane.
Wow.
I think it was the right-hand lane. And I'm looking due southeast from there, directly over Pep Boys. But this object was further away. People who were in, at that time, Kmart was there. There was a group of people in Kmart, I think it was 5 people, was a family. And they seen it, in addition to many other people seen it, but they didn't tell me about it. There was another gentleman across the street who worked at, I think it was a men's store across the street. He was locking the business up, and he was with an employee, and both of them seen it. He told me about it. Mm-hmm. And here this thing's up there in the sky. We had a 13-mile-an-hour wind from the north, blowing strong, 13-plus-mile-an-hour wind. And it sat there. It didn't move. It was like painted in the sky. You could see in the distance, oh, by the way, perfectly clear sky, not a cloud. And you could see in the back planes coming into Midway. And you could see them as they go in back of it. And so it's obviously between that point and from where I'm at. And it was further, it obviously had to be further southeast from where I was looking. And the vantage point, I mean, it's from my vantage point, it was a couple thousand feet in the air. It wasn't low, it was up there. It took off, and as it took off, and getting back to the point I was trying to make, as it took off, it went from reddish orange to gold. And then it went to, I believe it went to yellow. No, it went to yellow, sure. It went to yellow, then a greenish blue, and then it went to white. And I followed it, and as I'm following it, I told my wife, yell out when the colors change and tell me what the color is. So this way I have an idea of the time difference between each variation and an idea of the distance. Well, we followed it for, I forget how many minutes, looking. We were on the road for 7 minutes looking for it. That much I know. Where we lost it may have been somewhere in the range of a minute or two, because it went due west, southwest. West-southwest. So it went across, let's say it's going towards Joliet, over 80, and it moved pretty quick. From perfectly still to moving across, and it went through all the colorations. It basically covered the spectrum of a prism, as far as the color spectrum. It was pretty interesting.
Wow. Man, I gotta start hanging out with you, Sam. I think they know you're around or something, because these things are like popping up. I
tell you what, that is interesting when you have one. Now, that was the only orb I've seen. I've seen discs. I have seen multiple discs. This, on the other hand, blew my mind. Oh.
That would blow my mind. I'd be up all night long thinking about that. If I saw that, Jesus, oh my God. All right, let's fast forward a little bit to 2 years later, November 7th, 2006, an incident at 415 in O'Hare Airport. I believe it was gate C-17. 12 employees of the airport witnessed a silver-like disc hovering over the C-17 gate. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That report came I was on the phone with the current director at the time. In fact, we were in the process of transferring the position to me, and he was moving out of state. So it was, here we are on the phone talking, and he's getting interrupted. And I'm like, who the hell's calling him, And he says, it's Peter, I got to grab the phone, it's something important. I go, well, it's Peter Davenport, it's got to be important. So we were going to see each other that weekend anyway, so it doesn't matter. And here what happens, I find out, is Peter was getting calls from people who worked at the employees of American Airlines. Here they are, they're at gate C-17. They're loading up the plane, and they're seeing this object below a ceiling of clouds, which is about 1,900 feet in the air, and it's below it, maybe 300 to 400 feet below it. Mm-hmm. And they're seeing this object directly over gate C-17. And this is in Class B airspace, which is restricted airspace. You're not supposed to be there unless you got a transponder, and they know you're in the area. Mm-hmm. But this thing was just sitting there. The object looked like looked like a disc, but it was plumper. It was a little wider, and it blended somewhat into the cloud ceiling. It looked sort of the same color but darker, and it seemed to be moving in a counterclockwise motion. Well, he was getting reports from these folks. They called the tower. They talked to their manager, and there was also a plane that was being pushed back to. It was waiting to be pushed back, and it was going to North Carolina. And the pilot and co-pilot both saw it. We know thousands of people may have seen this. I shouldn't say thousands. Let's just say hundreds of people may have seen this. In other words, it's a mass sighting. There's no doubt about it. It's a mass sighting. There's crosstalk on the radio of people taxiing in planes. One guy was taxiing in 777, and here he sees this thing, and they're talking to each other. There's all sorts of communication and recordings of witnesses that actually seen this take place. Well, the report came into National UFO Reporting Center, Newfork, and it was assigned to NARCAP, which is the National Aviation Reporting Center for Anomalous Phenomena under the direction of Dr. Haynes. Dr. Haynes worked on over 3,000 cases of such things, and he was an optical psychiatrist and physicist, I believe, for NASA, and a consultant to the industry for stuff like this. And anytime there was an aviation reporting, an aviation scenario, they would usually get it and handle the case. So my involvement would have been in a capacity to work as a team with the team. So I worked with the team, and by the way, you can read the technical report on this. It's about 128 pages, and it's at narcap.org. It's a very good report. It's technical paper number 10, and my gosh, there is information in there that's very good, very scientific, laid out. This object, by the way, my witness came to me. I discovered her actually on Above Top Secret. I seen chatter going on Above Top Secret about this case, and I reached out to Mark Allen, one of the owners of Above Top Secret, and he reached out to her, and she contacted me. So I got to interview her, and she told me, first of all, her background was she's a military brat from the East Coast, who was also a reporter and a talking head on one of the major stations out there, doing broadcasts and a few other things. And eventually, as she retired and moved along, she became a teacher out here in Indiana. She was there that day driving along Midlothian. Not Midlothian, up to Manheim. She's driving up there, and she's seen the object in the sky. And she knows what should be there and shouldn't be there. Her father was a captain of an air wing for the Navy. She knew planes, both conventional and some unconventional. She was describing this in proper terms, aviation terms. She sees this thing below the object, along with her friend, who was a doctor from Belgium. And they were there to pick up a friend of theirs who was a American Airlines pilot. By the way, this wasn't at a American Airlines ramp, it was UAL, United Airlines, so I want to correct that. She was there to pick up a American Airlines pilot at the international concourse, because he was coming in and they were all going to get together, they were friends. She goes there, she pulls into the concourse parking lot, and they're paying attention to this thing all the way in there. Both of them had reading glasses, and they had them at a pitch, they were able to see it much better. And she says, well, I got out of there. There were people all over the place, obviously paying attention to this, and many of them taking pictures and videos. And the reason why she went out Above Top Secret was to get these people interested in coming forward with their videos and photos. of which we only have a few, and we don't have the authors or the owners of that to come forward and give us more detail, so it can only be used as an illustration.
So you need you need someone to say that, hey, it was me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chain of evidence, authentication.
Yeah.
Real
Sorry, I had a problem with authentication.
You know,
I don't know why I had a problem with that word. The other thing is, we are going to take a small little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Sam Maranto some more. So stand by. We'll be right back after these messages from Graveside Paranormal. This is Neal with Graveside Paranormal and Spirits by the Graveside. Every Sunday night at 7 o'clock, we will be on Anchor FM, Spotify, as well as YouTube channel of the episodes that we do. We also do investigative tours throughout the Chicagoland area through Graveside Paranormal Investigative Tours. And also we do investigate the paranormal. So if you have a problem or anything like that, we are more than happy to help. Our number is 708-227-7747. Once again, 708-227-7747. Boo. We're back with Sam Maranto from he is a investigative researcher and ufologist. He's been on multiple shows. We are continuing our talk, and let me tell you, this is some good talk today. I really do appreciate it. Let me ask you this, Sam. On Sunday, October 30th, 1938, we all know about the show with Orson Welles, War of the Worlds. We had that on there. There was a big panic in the United States from people jumping out of windows. Just everybody's scared because it's all real to them. Do you think that in our lifetime, because why is all of a sudden the government now saying that UFOs are real? When we go back to the Roswell, they're saying, oh, it's a weather balloon and this and that. Basically lying like 3-4 times just on that subject alone of the Roswell incident. What do you think? Do you think we're going to really find out what's going on in our lifetime? Is it something that's possibly going to happen because the government's opening up now?
Well, it's like multiple layers of who knows.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's going on and what we're going to see in the next, possibly, either next week or who knows, I would say the latest, the 24th of June, what we're going to see is a request to have a continuation for more time. And the reason why, I'll address this first, there's 18 departments that have asked to put their information, or I should say, to release specific information. Now, what would be released is only going to be information that would be unclassified or would become unclassified.
Mm-hmm.
Then, after it gets evaluated, 2 times after that, whatever that ends up being will or may be presented to the American public.
Do you think that this is happening because it's definitely a change of the guard? Where, take for instance, like you had State Representative Mark Rubio last year. He really wants, and more state representatives and senators really want more and more things being put out of evidence on UFOs and any other anomalies that are going on in the world. Do you think it's a change in the guard?
Well, they had to put that out because of the Nimitz scenario of actually 2004. It all came about with Luis Elizondo coming forward and talking to Blumenthal, Keene, and Carroll, I believe is the other one, who submitted the article to the New York Times, and that was the December 18th, 2018, or was it 17th, 18th? But that really put the ball in motion to do something.
I'm sorry, what is the Nimitz article?
The Nimitz, USS Nimitz, is an aircraft carrier that was the fleet that was out doing maneuvers.
Okay, right. All right. Yeah, I remember because we did put out news on that a couple broadcasts ago. So you think it's because of that that it went basically viral, That now that they're starting to talk about it more?
Well, yeah, what happened is now the Navy and the DoD has a different protocol on pilots reporting UAPs, and the reason why they use the term UAP is because the phenomena itself isn't necessarily flying. It's using different principles of physics. So the term flying may not be appropriate. So to say it's a unidentified aerial phenomena may be more accurate in some of these instances. Now, for ourselves, there are many different terms: UAVs, URVs. There's the ARVs, alien reversed vehicle, reverse technology. There's so many different acronyms depending on.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah,
there are.
It's the bottom line. It's semantics. It's just what we refer to as. Basically, we've gotten used to using the term UFO, though that's really not appropriate, or not even, conducive in this environment when it comes to looking at it from a scientific perspective, let's say. So, yeah, that the whole thing there is so many things happened in the last 3 years along this line, and I think for a number of reasons. One being the technology is there, okay? This technology is in the hands of various contractors and has been there for a long time. Not all of it, but some of it. The other possibility is, since the Navy also filed 3 different patents, did you know about that?
No.
3 different patents had been filed pertaining to really exotic technology and various components within that technology, and that it is workable technology. In other words, you can't just file a patent and expect to get it. It has to be shown to work. This opens another possibility that I think many people don't want to look at. The fact that this technology is in the hands of certain individuals, possibly even other countries. So to make it into the realm of protecting patents and possibly even exporting the technology into, let's say, a higher production mode, you'd have to bring it into the world of being in the white technology instead of black technology. Mm-hmm. And you know what I'm saying, as far as taking out of secret black projects into bringing it forward and securing patents.
Now, could somebody? I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I'm thinking we may have an instance where foreign countries are also have advanced quite a bit on this technology, and now to secure rights and control, patents need to be secured. I think that's something most people aren't looking at as far as a possibility. The other thing is there may be events down in the horizon, along the horizon, that they will not have an opportunity to hide this anymore, and you don't want to have egg on your face.
Sure.
Now, that would be the far-reaching one. In other words, right now they're trying to say, no, this is our technology or somebody's technology. Therefore, we have to be concerned about it as from the point of a national security concern. And it's really brilliant. That was the best way to go about doing it. Of course, Dr. Greer in 2001 wanted to bring this out in a different manner. 20 years later, hasn't really accomplished much through the Disclosure Project. Mm-hmm. So this has really worked out, bringing this forward as a matter of a national security threat, potential national security threat.
Wow.
The other aspect is, let's say you're in an area and one of these objects come into play, and it just so happens it's in a line of sight or radar of say a Russian plane or a Iranian plane, and all of a sudden you're asked to engage it, and all of a sudden you fire a missile. It misses the UAP because it takes off, and it hits hits another country's plane. All of a sudden, you've just created a war environment. In other words, it can create or trigger other problems. We've had these things go over missile silos, deactivating and activating missiles. Have you known that?
I've heard of stories like that, where you hear about an extraterrestrial object, UFO, if you will, flying over, and all of a sudden everything gets knocked out. All the electricity, whatever's in the area there. I've heard of those things happening, but you're saying that it could be from a man-made one, not an extraterrestrial one. Am I correct?
Well, no, these incidents were not. These incursions were not done by man-made objects. These were done by these other objects.
Okay.
And so let's say, for instance, these things are in. Let's say we're having an operation like we did with the Nimitz, and you have a whole, you have a whole battle group out there for 2 months doing exercises, and you have these objects raining in, as one gentleman put it, that was working the Aegis radar system. Spy One at that time was the best he had. And these things were falling in from 80,000 feet. They were painting them on the radar because that's where they start picking them up at 80,000. That's 15,000.15 miles up in the air. All of a sudden, these things start coming in.
Sure.
Now they come in and say they're lingering at a higher altitude. They're only going 100 miles an hour. But then all of a sudden you get your F-18s out there, and they're supposed to be doing these various mock dogfights and all this stuff. And they start coming down. And they're going to 28,000 feet. Now they're close range to these F-18s, and they could cause problems. They could cause collisions. They can interfere with electronic devices. They were jamming their radar. So, I mean, and the minute you jam a radar, it's considered an act of war. So, I mean, the bottom line is it's engaging. So, usually you have the right to engage them too. Another plane or an object, whatever.
Wow.
So, no, there were problems. And then they exhibit these incredible feats. I mean, they dropped from 80,000 feet above the water, or to 28,000, then down to above the water, in 0.78 seconds. In other words, not even a second.
That is, wow, that is incredible.
Yeah, that's pulling like 600 some Gs. 600 some Gs. So that would be like two tanks. Oh, God, more than that.
Humans could definitely not survive that.
No. I mean, just think of how it's an exotic piece of machinery, and they stop. It's these things can stop in an instant and be gone, and they also seem to know things. In other words, they're able to tap into both your technology, possibly even your mind to some degree,
to know if you're going to go do something.
Yes, there's elemental abilities here that exceed anything we can even imagine. So the thing is that our technology? My gosh, I would hope so, but I don't think so. In other words, we may have some technology, but not necessarily everything that's being exhibited and being reported. No way.
Wow. Now, in the field that you do, I know that you get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, and some, seem a little wacky, and some other ones don't. But do you get a lot of calls of abductions in the Illinois area?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Usually one a month.
Really?
On average, I would say one a month we get an encounters abduction scenario. And MUFON has an ERT group, which is Encounters Research Team. And as a general rule, I direct them to them. Years back, I would spend more time working on those, but today I'm so focused on so much other work that that just, it's so consuming as far as time.
Because I get calls of people who, because I'm in the paranormal field, and I get phone calls of people saying that I have my child's possessed or this and that, and especially when it's like a kid or something like that, you got to make it like priority number one. See what's going on, make sure the family's taken care of properly. It is very time consuming. It is very time consuming, and some of the things you wonder when you do go into a case like that, if you were going to go see an abduction, you want to make sure that you're doing it right. You want the best that's for their family, because you don't want to be thinking about it later that I should have done it this way or should have done it that way or something like that.
The legalities are off the wall.
Yeah, you really have to.
So many.
Yeah.
So we never, in fact, we don't even if we're going in the field, all my FIs have to have somebody with them.
Sure.
There's only one exception to that. I may be the exception, or one other gentleman who has a lengthy experience in intelligence gathering and working for various agencies.
Yeah.
So he's qualified and has, 30 some years of experience, so that's not an issue.
Now,
but as a general rule, you should have somebody with you all the time.
That's what we do too. I always make sure that there's always someone with me if I get called out to somewhere. Right? That is, man, you're so correct on that, to make sure you have someone with you.
Yep.
One of the other things is, like we said, that we're in the paranormal field on our side. Now, but you had a paranormal experience with our Resurrection Mary. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I had a sighting that falls into the category of seeing someone who fits the profile of, all things, Resurrection Mary. And it was in August. It was the weekend of a near full moon. And I knew the date, doggone, it was 20-something. And it was probably around 1 o'clock in the morning. I was driving down Archer Road. I was at the intersection of Roberts Road and Archer Road, heading south, and southwest, whatever. That would have been, at the time, Marlene's Landmark was there.
Yes.
I pulled up. I was in the left-hand lane. The car in front of me was a 1969 Le Mans with that ugly purple. I always call it ugly purple because I didn't like it. So hopefully I don't offend nobody. And the car to the right was a Buick. I think it was a 73 Buick. And we took off. And all of a sudden, after we passed the fire station to the right, and I believe it was 9, in fact, I'm sure it was 9 posts down. So it'd be, the telephone post down, 9 down. I seen a girl to the, first of all, I seen a bunch of fog. Fog is, take that back. The first thing I saw was brake lights. The 2 cars in front of me put their brakes on. They were in fog. All of a sudden, there's this fog coming across the road, coming from the right, going towards Resurrection Cemetery. I slowed down. I'm thinking there's something, either deer crossing besides the fog. I also know that curves over there, and that you could get hit head on if you have somebody who forgot to put their lights on or a little bit tipsy. So I went to the right-hand lane and started to go through the fog, and I noticed this girl walking that I didn't notice before when I was at the light. In other words, I'm at the light prior to that. I noticed the cars, more so the 69, which was in great condition. But I also looked ahead. I didn't see anybody there at that point. When I got into the fog, I looked to the right. Now I'm in the right-hand side, and directly next to us is this girl walking along, and she's, of course, the moonlight and the fog. She looks like she's glowing, and she has this this white gown on with, and I seen embroidering on it, and she has the French cuffs, and she's holding in her left hand, she has her arms crossed, and she's holding in her left hand shoes, okay, in her left hand, her arms are crossed, and up to her chest, and she has blonde hair, which is in pin curls. She's not looking at me, she's looking perfectly straight, and very weird. So the first thing I'm thinking, this is either some hippie chick or this is some wacko. Shouldn't be on the road at this time of the night.
Yeah, it's 1 a.m.
And it's Yeah, 1 a.m. And you know that area, there is no sidewalk there. It's mud, glass. And I'm like, God, how could she be walking along? That's awful. Meanwhile, the interior of the car dropped heaven knows how many degrees. So cold. When I was looking at her, the hair on the back of my neck started coming up, I never had this experience. Chills all over. And I started to tear, uncontrollable tearing. And I turned and I looked towards the windshield, and I could see my breath hitting the windshield. And I'm like, God, is it cold? And my wife was tired, so she's curled up in the passenger seat, and she's sleeping. She goes, put the heat on. So I put the heat on, and we go through the fog, and it gets warmer, and I get to the intersection in the next street, and I said to my wife, I go, Julie, I go, you know what? I think I just saw Resurrection Mary. Because none of this made sense. And I'm thinking, what kind of crazy person would be walking like that? And I looked in back of me, no cars. Looked ahead of me, the 2 cars that are in front of me, they were gone. So I went around, I came back, made a U-turn, I go back. And the fog is now, let's say about, it's more than halfway through the other side of the road. And it's almost completely in the cemetery. She's nowhere to be seen. I go back in, and I go stop at my parents' house. I didn't even want to go home. I was so frightened. And ring the doorbell. First thing my brother says, and he comes to the door, he goes, God, looks like you've seen a ghost.
No.
I go, you know what? I swear to God, he said that. And I says, you know what? I think I may have.
Wow.
So we stayed there that night, and honestly, I didn't go past that location, I would say, for 6 months.
Really?
And I kept the story to myself, but I told family members. A friend of ours had an experience like that. He lived out in out west, and he'd retired. So I got to talk to him about it.
Yeah,
but
I would stop
but
my
then
car,
Rich
man.
Crow, Rich Crow, he
Yeah.
is a friend of mine, so he contacted me. And I hadn't talked to him in years, and I told him about it. But done a couple interviews on it. It was interesting. Again, I didn't get out. I didn't check her identification. I didn't check her vitals. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all I could say.
Man,
that's it. That's what I saw, and that's it.
That's your story, and you're sticking to it.
Yeah, I can't vouch for being any one thing or another.
Yeah, that's a good story. I like your details on it, man. That's really cool, man. I really dig it. I would have stopped the car. Just me being me, I'd be like, "Oh, hey, lady, can I talk to you for a minute?" It's just the way I am. So that is a really cool story. I really dig it. Now, talk about another cool thing about Chicagoland. You're now into the Mothman and with the Chi-Town Mothman, correct? Sightings.
Yeah, the Chi-Town Mothman and what we're calling our research. And boy, it was just weird. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of misgivings on some of this information. It is an interesting study. Mm-hmm. And as you know some of the mythology about it that's been tossed around. Mm-hmm. The first report that came into MUFON, and it came in October the 13th. We received it at 8:51 in the morning at the CMS. It was fielded to me, I had it, and I reviewed the report and the photograph, which we have the original photograph, the timestamp, the metadata. We have all that. And it was a full report. Person gave every piece of detail, their name, real people, and got his wife's name in there. And what they were doing is, you know the area pretty well. Mm-hmm. Over at 63rd and Pulaski, I think you know that area, don't you?
Of course.
Well, the big Indian up there, that big Indian.
Yeah.
You know the Indian.
Everybody knows
well,
the
everybody
Indian.
Goes past there that knows the Indian, knows the thumb is sticking out, his left thumb is sticking out in the midriff area, and it doesn't appear to be the thumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear
and
you.
Hi,
how are you?
And that's why people take pictures of the darn thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this guy is going into the city. He lives in Joliet now, or did at that time. And he was with his wife, and he tells it quite honestly. I get out there, and for years I've seen people laugh, and I want to take a picture of this darn thing. He goes, takes a picture of it, goes back home, and while going through the pictures, he notices something odd in the photograph. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, he took that picture on August the 22nd, 2004.
What?
August the 22nd, 2004.
1 day later.
39 days later.
Yeah, 39 days.
That's when he files it, 39 days later. 8:30, 8:51 in the mornings when report comes in. Meanwhile, later in the day, we get another report from another group, okay, another very prominent now in the this whole new Chicago Mothman scenario. Mm-hmm. And that one, first of all, we know what that is because it was. I've spent. Oh gosh. Well, you have some idea how dogged I am when it comes to stuff. Mm-hmm. It's a kite. We know what it is, and it's a Gala kite. Gala kite. In fact, they emailed me back saying yes. They even told us the model of what it was, and we went and had it. I had wildlife photographer Ralph Smith examine it, and he says definitely it's not a living thing. I know that for a fact. And he says, and he looked at me and he smiled. He says, "There's enough information in that photograph that you will be able to tell exactly what it is." Mm-hmm. And so we did. I did all these enhancements, evaluations, looked at different things, and sure enough, we came down to it's got to be some type of kite. And sure enough, I went to the Chicago Kite store up north, mm-hmm. and he says, "Yeah, it's a kite." I go, "Do you think it's something along the line of a Gala kite?" "Sure, it's a Delta kite." So of course, something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's when I sent it off. But that's after how many years and hundreds of hours working on this because it was driving me nuts. I was trying to figure out what the damn thing was,
Wow.
So we finally figured that out. But meanwhile, the story takes off. Mind you, this is 2011. The next thing, and that night on Coast to Coast AM on the 22nd, mm-hmm. Andy Colvin was on, who is a renowned expert on the Point Pleasant Mothman. He was on Coast to Coast that night. Mm-hmm. On the 13th, on the 12th, the night before, October the 12th, 2011, who was on the radio was Kevin Smith, and he had a Mothman person on, gave a very good interview. Both of those being very popular shows for anybody interested in the paranormal.
Oh yeah, definitely a lot of people interested in paranormal. Now, we know in this area here, in the area that we live in, because I told you that story that me and my son, I think it was the day after the Super Bowl or the night of the Super Bowl. These are some giant owls that are out here.
Oh yeah,
and
monstrous ones.
When I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, these things are huge. Like yep. I ran in my house for a second, and I looked out the window, and I go, "What in the hell is that?"
Oh yeah.
And
female great horned owls are huge. They could go, looking like about 3 feet. They're huge. When they got a wingspan out, they're big.
And they got those sharp talons.
They'll rip you to threads.
Yeah, it's like looking at you, like it'll turn its head and like look at you and go, "Yeah, I dare you. Just come on." And you're like, "No, I'm going in the house, drink my Bud Light. I ain't gonna bother you." Yeah. So, what do you think? Do you think the Mothman? Now, what you're right now? You're still doing the Mothman sightings and your investigation on the Mothman. Am I correct in the Chicagoland area?
Yes, because in 2017, what had happened was it all started up again.
Yes.
In fact, it started at 2002 days later, which, by the way, 2002 was the year of the Mothman prophecy came out. Exact same year. There's a lot of weird correlations, and of course, October 13, we got 13. 13 is a very significant number when it comes to both the paranormal, as you know, and also with Point Pleasant. There's all these unusual patterns of synchronicities and themes. Themes are very prominent too. So at the intersection of 63rd and Pulaski, you had a Native American, which is prominent with the Point Pleasant scenario. You have this unusual object in the sky, looking like a moth or some sort of thing. That very same day, October 13th, another report came in where two college girls were supposedly in their fifth floor apartment in the Miller Park area, and they become very alarmed at seeing these first orange, then red, what they say eyes glowing and staring in through a window. They frantically call their boyfriend, or grab the phone because he's calling them, who was in a park far away, who had just seen this large bat type thing, a light, A-L-I-G-H-T, a light into the air. You don't alight into the air. You alight down. You don't alight up. Interesting words. Yeah. It was like they went to school at medieval times, And it's like a B movie script. Oh, you got to read this. You'll cry. It's hysterical.
How dare you?
I dare you to a duel.
I dare you. Come on. Please, begin.
It's crazy. So this thing takes off, and they said they were able to discern the size of this thing and what it was because of the moonlight and the light of the city, because it was a nearly full moon. The moon was at 16% of its illumination, which is 83.7 less than which would be a full moon. That's not considered and it was raining out. And the guys were watching a basketball game. I mean, there's all this malarkey that's going on. Then we see is in 2017. I'll get to 2017 right away. But the very next day, the 14th, there is a sighting in the park by the university, and that person that's making this report says it reminded them of a large sugar glider as they would have seen back in their home in Australia.
Really?
Oh, wait, excuse me, Tasmania.
Tasmania,
which is the island state of Australia. Now, since 1908, we have also lovingly called Australia Oz, O-Z, Oz. And actually it was named that because of the third book written by L. Frank Baum, who wrote the book The Wizard of Oz in Chicago in 1900. Strange thing enough. 2017, where does the first report come from? Oz Park. Do you believe this?
Dude, you're like blowing my mind right now. I'm just like, where is he getting all this?
Oh, I'm a dogged researcher.
Man.
So, I mean, and then that very day, on the 7th of April, not far from there, was the first opening night of The Wizard of Oz at the Chopin Theater, which is on 1453 Division. Now, 1453, you add that up, that's 13. Which cuts through Humboldt Park, where we had another report two thereafter. So what happens is there's a whole sequence of things, these commonalities. Then what we were doing is pulling the IP addresses of the reports that came into MUFON. We had 3 reports that came in initially in April of 2017. 2 of them came from the same IP address, which means an IP address versus an ISP.
Yes.
Your IP address is like your address versus your zip code. It pinpoints a geographic location where that server is actually at, be it a house or a business. So we had 2 reports that connected directly to it. Then we had 4 more reports, 3 of which tied to an individual IP address, though it wasn't the same one because we already mentioned that there was a problem going on, so they already knew. So there was so many unusual things to tie in besides the style metrics. In other words, we analyze the footprint of how things are said, the way people use terms, everything from metaphors to aphorisms, etc., idioms. So in other words, we could tear apart a report and have a better idea if it came from the same person. And they have. If it isn't the same person, it's part of the team. So in other words, many of these reports were just narratives, fictional narratives, but not every single one of them. Many of them were genuine reports of misidentifications, and possibly something even weirder than that. Maybe something really weird.
Right.
And those are the ones that we'd like to work on, but we end up doing a lot of report, just doing investigative work.
Right.
So,
like a lot of the stories, that you're told through people and this and that, there's always some kind of real ounce of truth to it. And once you start really getting into it and you start researching things and this and that, and you start seeing correlations during things, it's amazing when you really, really get down to the nitty-gritty about these things and you say, oh my God, this could be real.
Even the fictional ones, there is a theme to them. There is these synchronicities that these people could never, ever in their life even imagine that they had these things running through them. So, is it possible? Much like, John Keel, who was the main investigator for Point Pleasant, the Mothman, is it possible then that we are seeing the same harmonic of unusual activity, that you don't even have to have the real McCoy going on, but you could create it, much like you had mentioned before.
A topa.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, because
so in other words, if you don't have the real McCoy, you could get that unusual other undertow going on. Maybe not the thing actually showing up, but the residual effects, that synchronicities, this undercurrent of unusual themes. What I'm concerned about is, if that is the case, the other residual effect, supposedly, and I don't know if it is or isn't or was the disaster of the Silver Bridge on the 15th of December.
Right.
That's one thing I don't want to see happening. So that was something that had me staying up at night.
Yeah, and nothing's happened. The best that I got was, I guess it was near Michigan City or something like that, but it had nothing to do with Chicagoland area. We're talking 100 and some odd miles out. Something happened during that time period. I forget exactly what it was, because I researched it, and I did not see any disasters happening within that timeline over in the Chicagoland area, which is a good thing. But do you think, other than the thought process of it probably being a topa, but what happens if it is a species? Do you think, would it be extraterrestrial, do you think? Or do you think it's just a species that we've just never ever are able to classify yet?
Well, I would say, first of all, the cases that I've seen so far and I've reviewed, I don't think there's one that I haven't. But many of them can be discounted as being misidentifications of great blue herons. We know exactly what it would be. The other was the large owls. Sandhill cranes look like pterodactyls.
Yes.
At night. Man, they scared the heck out of you.
What was it, 1960 something? People thought, or it was 74, people thought that they were seeing pterodactyls over near the southwest parts of Illinois, correct?
Well, we've had unusual things like that. We've had big birds. I'm trying to think of the year. The one is in Lawndale, where that young man was out there. He was in the yard, and thing came down and grabbed him.
Yeah.
He had to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And very well documented case. Lauren Coleman, his brother, worked that case for a long time, knew the man personally. In fact, I think Jack called him up. I don't know if he was able to talk to him or not, but he was trying to reach out to him.
Yeah.
That is a very good case. I've heard of many large cryptids in Illinois. That's why I don't discount. People think, well, you're a debunker. No, I'm an investigative researcher. And if there's something weird, we investigate it. And believe me, there's enough weird stuff out there to investigate that we don't need all this malarkey, because it just throws us off.
Yeah, this whole area, I really believe that there is something really, really that goes on in this whole area, going anywhere from Willow Springs, I would say, we'll say center point of Willow Springs, and at least a good 50-mile radius outside of that, east, west, north, south. There's something definitely going on that causes it, and we talked about ley lines before, and I don't want to get too detailed about it, but could some of these things be happening supernaturally? I don't know. But there's a lot of things that are going on here in this part of Illinois. Anything from aliens,
I don't argue with you, man. I
aliens,
agree.
to ghosts, the paranormal events. It's astounding.
Yeah. But you know, this goes back. I mean, you look at the Native American lore and everything that's in this area, and this whole thing. And I'm so happy that, in a way, that it ties this whole Chicago Chi-Town flap ties into this, because every single one of the locations, it's either a tie-in with a individual that has a tie-in to Native American lore, or possibly even something a little more out there, which is another fun part. The L. Frank Baum scenario does tie into Native American scenario. I mean, it's just, there's so many different things. People forget our history of this area and the Native Americans that lived here, what they went through, and the other people coming here just trying to get along with each other, and the struggle over property, and it's sad. It's a sad legacy. And you don't want to see these same things ripple again. See these ripples in time. I think these residuals come back, and I think that's what we're starting to see here as far as what's being communicated.
Yeah,
So,
I'm in total agreement with you. We live in a society now, and I'm not trying to harp on anything, but we live in a society that we're always looking at that thing in our hand, that phone. And
yeah, how about it?
we live in a society we don't think about the real history about things. We only get interpreted by the knowledge that's given to us by Facebook. And it is a shame. It really is a shame. And when you say about the residual, are some of these things being residual because they're trying to remind us, of things that were in the past, and to try to say, hey, listen, maybe we're going down the wrong path. Because you and I have talked about like the 5G and stuff like that. And we had a short conversation. We won't get into all that. We can do that for another show. But I think you're absolutely right, and I'm in total agreement with you about the residual. Totally agreement with it. Now, last question. Do you think in me and your lifetime, meaning you and I only got at least so many years left, not that we're completely old, but compared to a 20-year-old person, do you think we'll see something where we're actually going to make real contact with somebody, where it's completely documented, it's on TV? Do you think in our lifetime we'll be able to see something like that?
As far as the acknowledgement of something like that, or it's going to be a general?
It's not like a blanketed general thing like from the government saying, hey, it is real, but that we actually see a ship come down with some aliens that come out. What do you think?
Well, again, going back to what these things are, and I think we've gotten to a lot of discussion on that prior to the show. Are they interdimensional, dimensional, extraterrestrial? What the heck are they? The funny thing is, we have no idea what we are. And people say, well, what do you mean? We do not know what we are, who we are, or why we are. That is an absolute fact.
Right.
If you put that in outside of other than a human evaluation, we have no clue.
Are we in a simulated reality?
Yeah.
Right.
So imagine if we had that answer, which is really what it comes down to. All of this stuff would mesh like a gear, and it would all make some degree of sense. So I guess I can only answer that. It's semantics. What do we mean by what? Are we going to see something more of a revelation that we're not alone in this great everything, that we are not the center of what may be a God's big G plan? Who knows? Possibly. Maybe that's part of the preparation. Another concern about this preparation, possibly, a faked invasion, which I hear about time and time again.
Yeah,
so,
we were talking about that. Yep. Yes.
We talked about it. And the bottom line is it about control? Well, that would be a great way to control people.
Oh, yeah.
But I think as it stands right now, we have so much control, there is nothing that can be done without being monitored. It's like, it cracks me up. It's like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. The bottom line is, this is the only time in history where a power that is in place has both all the means to maintain its degree of sovereignty, in addition to the willingness to maintain that. So if anything's going to take place, it'll be at the discretion of somebody far higher in authority than any of us, and obviously higher than what we perceive as a government.
That makes complete sense to me, Sam. Well, Sam, I want to thank you. Do you have anything to plug at all? Are you selling books?
No, I don't have any books to plug. I just want to thank people for the opportunity to talk with you, and I hope that everybody just enjoys their weekend.
Yeah.
The other thing is, eventually I'll get out and maybe I could attend one of your events and vice versa.
Oh, yeah.
We'll start having some events. I was just talking to some folks, and we're going to be down at Stav Rock on October the 9th. We'll be having a there. Don Schmidt will be talking, and we're down at Stav Rock usually a couple times a year. And what I will do is tell you when we have any public events. And the other thing is, people who have an interest in joining MUFON, which is the organization I belong to, you could just go online, go to MUFON.com, and just become a member. It's all like $5 or $6 a month. Okay. So I recommend it, and I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you.
The pleasure's been mine. I'm going to be honest with you, man. You see, and I love it when I'm reaching out to people who just have great knowledge on all these things and are great researchers like yourself. I really appreciate it. I love that you came on. I have to thank Jack Chavez for pointing you out to me. It's been really a pleasure. It's all me being a pleasure, man. I'm very happy with the subject that we were talking about tonight. It's awesome. So,
well, anytime you want me back, I'm more than welcome.
Yeah,
the pleasure's all mine.
And there's so many subjects that are out there that that you and I can talk about.
Oh gosh, yes.
I mean,
we got to get together.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just sit there and just listen to you. All right. Well, definitely. Thanks again, Sam, for coming on.
Thank you.
I do appreciate it. Everybody else who is out there, like Sam said, enjoy the weekend. Summertime's here. We don't know if we're going to be doing another show in June because I am going to be going on vacation, but we will be coming back in probably July, the first Sunday in July. So with everybody out there, as usual,